Welcome to Chatting the Pictures. My name is Cara Finnegan, and I'm a writer, teacher, and historian of photography.
And I'm Michael Shaw. I'm a writer, a psychologist, and also publisher of Reading the Pictures.
Immigration photos from the US-Mexico border have long chronicled stress and despair. This photo not only does that, but achieves something more accomplished in a news image. It also effectively draws attention to key policy issues.
In this photo taken by Kirsten Luce for the New York Times, we see 14-year-old twins from Guatemala traveling without adult family members on their way to Roma, Texas. Here, they cross a river in the middle of the night before surrendering to U.S. authorities and presenting their documents. As migrants find ways around Title 42, the Trump COVID regulation that required automatic expulsion for asylum seekers, the number of unaccompanied minors crossing the border has spiked.
You see the issue of the migration of the unaccompanied minor very clearly in this photograph, as we have these twins. There's another girl in the immediate foreground of the image. And so this is essentially a photograph on one level of a policy issue. And on the other hand, it's also a photograph of what happens to families when they have to make this kind of choice. So, here there's really an absence of adults entirely around these children in the context of the way that Luce has framed this particular version of this moment. And that empty space around the children is really vast. So you get the sense that they really are alone, that they really are not only unaccompanied minors in a policy sense, but that they are really missing any kind of adult presence. And it invites you to think about not only what is behind the choice to do that, but also what's going to happen to them.
Yeah, it's really impressive how much this photograph, amongst so many photographs that we're seeing weekly of migrants at the border, does balance stress, pain, fear, and then also, yes, politics. And the presence of that piece of paper in one of the twins' hands really does emphasize where we are in terms of this regulatory situation. What's happened is that the Biden administration has been bound by Title 42, but they also have been working to loosen the restrictions and find ways to raise quotas for immigrants with asylum claims to come to the U.S. So this image right now is very topical. There are a number of photographs that Luce contributed to an extensive feature on the New York Times. There are many photographs there that focus and emphasize the importance of documentation.
In a number of the rest of the photos that Luce made, these are images made at night. The series of photos, emphasizes not only the fact of that, but also the metaphorical aspects that connect to this idea of darkness, uncertainty, lack of clarity, obscure policy. And here the composition, I think, is really telling on that point, because essentially 50% of this photograph, essentially from the top to the middle, is almost entirely black. It's entirely dark. And the choice the photographer made, of course, is to focus on the people, in particular these children in the foreground. But by doing that, there's also this large space behind them that's really ill-defined. And so to the extent that that also taps into complex policies and structures that could change in a moment and really affect the lives of all of the people in this photograph, I find that a really telling compositional choice.
It's also really interesting to look at a version of this photo that ran in the New York Times. In that picture, you see some additional elements where, for one, you see the light on the head of a border agent that's like a beacon. Then you also see people clustered in the background. And when you look at that version of the image with the twins in the foreground, the agent, the people in the background, what you really understand is the orderliness and sense of procedure in these particular images. The border agents refer to those that surrender as give-ups. And in this particular case, that's what these twins are preparing to do, is to submit their documents and turn themselves in. So one thing this other version of the photo does is really emphasize how much people on both sides know the drill.